Welcome our new student to your new year in the Faculty of Dentistry, Tanta University. Today we are going to explain how to mount the maxillary and the mandibular cast on the mechanical device called an articulator. The process of mounting explained or defined is the attachment of the jaw lesion obtained from the patient into a mechanical device called an articulator. So, what the instruments we are going to need in our section? At first, we are going to need wax, arginate spatula, wax knife, plasticine, and Vaseline or any separating medium, and an articulator, and a rubber band, plaster, water, and mixing bowl. And of course, we need properly made maxillary and mandibular record blocks and their master cast. Before we start, we need to do an index in the base of the maxillary and the mandibular cast. 3 V-shaped notches will be placed, 2 in the posterior of the cast, like this, and 1 will be placed in the anterior region of the midline. The function of these grooves will help to remount the cast in the laboratory remounting procedure. After you finalize your denture, you will place the finalized denture in the master cast again into the articulator. So you need to make this groove, which will make an impression in the plaster and the articulator, and you can fit the cast again into the articulator in the central relation position of the patient. These V-shaped grooves will made like this. It must not contain any undercut. Their size may be 4 mm in depth, 4 mm in width. Small notches will made in the lower cast, again in the upper cast again. And another one in the midline. This will help to remount the master cast and the finalized denture on the articulator in the laboratory remounting procedure. So you can adjust any occlusal disharmony in the articulator. After you finalize making your indexes or making this V-shaped groove both upper and lower crust, you must do what's called sealing. Sealing is a process of closing any gaps or spaces between a record base and the master cast. So this process will help to prevent the entry of any plaster or any external material between the record base and the master cast. So the vertical dimension is preserved. How we can do this step? You can soften small amount of wax and you can close these gaps with the wax. We will close all the spaces or gaps between the record block and the cast in either the buccal, labial, or the lingual surface. And in the upper, we will close also the palatal aspect. We are continuing the sealing process. Again, the function of the sealing to prevent the entry of plaster or any material between the recorded blocks and the master cast, so the vertical dimension is preserved and the mounting it will be in the correct position and the correct relationship. Closing the gaps here in the bucket sulcus. We are going to close the gaps also on the lingual aspect. And don't forget to close the gaps in the retromolar area. Also on the other side. And the retromolar area. So you have sealed all the borders of the record blocks from the cast, like this. We have done the same steps for the maxillary casts in the buccal, labial, and the other buccal, and from the palatal aspect. So you have sealed your both casts and you have made your indices in the base of the cast. The last step is to attach the upper cast to the lower cast to be ready for the mounting. We have a simple technique or procedure to attach the upper cast to the lower cast in our lab. This step must be done in the clinic in the presence of the patient. But we don't have patient in our lab or be clinical here, so we must do it in our lab. At first, you must warm your wax knife. You should put two V-shaped groove, one on this side and one on this side of the maxillary cast. The V-shaped groove is V in their shape from the palatal direction and also V-shaped groove from the occlusogingival direction. So we'll place this V-shaped groove like this. You warm your wax knife. You place your wax knife like this and move it mesio-distal. Like this and like this. At the end, you should remove any remnant wax from these grooves. So you have made one V-shaped groove. And one on the other side. Like this. And like this. And remove any wax from the between. We should not allow any wax to split like this, so we should remove the wax. So our work is going to appear clean and shiny. We have placed two V-shaped grooves in the maxillary cast, one on the right, one on the left. So, on the other hand, the lower cast, you must place a layer of wax. But before placing a layer of wax, you should remove 1 or 2 millimeters from the wax rim, so that your vertical dimension cannot be changed by excess wax. So in the posterior region here, you can remove one layer of wax like this, and on the left side. So like this. Split. So after you remove 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters from the wax, you should warm it up or soften the base plate wax in the external source. Cut your layers, make it like a small hole, like a piece of gum, and place it here. Okay. You make one for the other side. Also soften a layer of wax. Make it like a small piece of gum and place it on the other side. Again, you should warm your wax knife. And you should make sure that the wax is sufficiently soft and no hard layer of wax. You should cut the piece of gum like this to ensure that it is fairly soft and nothing in it is hard. If any hard wax is not allowed to be soft, this will change your vertical dimension. You can raise the bite of the patient. So you should make sure that this piece of wax is very soft and nothing hard in it. Again. Make longitudinal cuts and cross-sectional cuts to allow it to soften. You can make sure it's soften after that. Warm it again. And you finish your work by putting the upper cast on the lower cast, or the maxillary cast on the mandibular cast. You make sure that the line, your line, is in its place, and you can press hard enough. Your canine line with your canine line, your midline with your midline, and on the other side your canine line along with each other. You should make sure that there is no space between the maxillary cast and the mandibular cast. There is no space at all. And at final result, you should make sure that your casts are along with each other. No cast is deviated to the right, no cast is deviated to the left, no cast is high enough or tilted, and your casts are both straight with each other. No tilting, no deviation, no separation. No separation between your casts. So you have attached your upper cast or maxillary cast to your mandibular cast. This step must be done in the clinic, and you obtain your relation from the patient mouse and you attach it to the articulator. You make sure that the index is right and every step is right. After that, you put your maxillary and mandibular cast in the slurry water for 5 minutes. After you remove the casts from the slurry water after 5 minutes, you should make sure that all the cast is wet, so the casts will not absorb water from the plaster during the mounting process. So there is no change in the vertical dimension. Also, you should make sure that there is no touch here between the acryl of the record blocks, either the maxillary or the mandible. Also, there is no touch between the stool of the upper and lower cast. After you finishing that, you should make sure that your articulator is working properly. There is no problem in your mechanical device. Your incisor post must touch the incisor plate. The incisor pin in its position. There is no deviation in the condylar movement of your mandible, and the condylar lock is seated and closed. So your articulator is ready to receive remounting. With Vaseline, so that there is no adhesion between the plaster and our articulator. You open your articulator, put a slice of plasticine, and put your cast on the plasticine, like this. There is two ways to do mounting in semi-adjustable articulator, either fully adjustable articulator and some mean value articulator like we do. You have two ways to do mounting on the articulator, either by bicycle transfer or by the means of Bonwell triangle. Here we are using Bonwell triangle rule to make mounting of our jaw relation. The Bonwell triangle in edentulous patient or in natural dentition, represents the occlusal plane of the patient. It represents the center of the condyle on both sides, the right and the left, and the tip of lower incisor teeth. This occlusal plane is called conal triangle. Here we use rubber band to represent the conal triangle. It's not actual the conal triangle, but it will simulate the conal triangle. You have on your mean value or either semi-value at the articulator a notch here on the right boob and a notch here in the left boob, and you have an anterior incisor pin. When you put your rubber band here in this notch and here in this notch and anteriorly in the incisor pin, make sure your rubber band in its position. This triangle will simulate or will represent the conal triangle. So you are adjusting your occlusal plane of upper and maxillary cusp in this plane. So we are doing this right now, and we can adjust it by using the plasticine. Here by putting the plasticine, putting our cast, closing our articulator. Make sure before you adjusting the occlusal plane that your casts are centralized in the mounting ring. So your cast is not going to the right, your cast is not going to the left, or anteriorly or posteriorly. You are centralized within the mounting ring. This metal ring is called the mounting ring. So you are centralizing your cast, adjusting your occlusal plane by rubber bands. Here, so you can adjust your occlusal plane by elevating the plasticine or pressing it downward to adjust your occlusal plane. Here, our occlusal plane is here. Posteriorly, it's elevated slightly, and anteriorly, I think it's correct. On the other side, the occlusal plane is slightly lowered. So this means that our casts are tilting toward to the right side. So we need to elevate the right side and lower the left posterior side. And adjust the plasticine. Or you can remove the cast. You can elevate the plasticine slightly. Again, put your cast, just support it, make it stable, close your upper boob, make sure that the cast is centralized, make sure that your occlusal plane is adjusted, and here the occlusal plane is good. If you feel that your rubber band is touching the cast, you can remove from the stone of the cast, or you can slightly move your rubber band in the buccal direction. Don't move it upward, don't move it rightward, slightly in the buccal direction. I think here there is no touch. I think the occlusal plane is correct. The occlusal plane is also correct. And make sure that your incisal pin is referring to the midline of the two casts. Make sure it's correct position and it's measuring or pointing to the midline of the patient or the midline of the record block. So this is the correct position of our cast, and these casts are ready to be mounted right now. So we should remove the rubber band again, open upper bow or compartment of the articulator, and we can mix the plaster. The plaster is mixed according to the manufacturer instruction or the recommended powder to liquid ratio. The recommended powder to liquid ratio is 3 measure of powder and 1 measure of the liquid. You don't make your mix very thick or very thin. Small amount of the plaster. We put a small amount of water and starting the mixing procedure. Here I think it's need more liquid or water, so I will put another again. The less water you use, the better the mix you can obtain. But you should make sure that all the powder particles are mixed. I think this is fair enough. Here I think the mix is dough, it's not floaty or it's very thick. This is the correct ideal mix. So after I put the mix, I should start putting your mix. And after that, you press your upper compartment again. Make sure that the incisor post is touching to the incisor plate to the downward and start to adjusting your plaster. By slight amount of water, you can adjust your mounting like this. As you see, we don't use a lot of plaster and we make it bulky and difficult to prepare, adjust or change. Small amount only of plaster. And we adjust it by small amount of water like this to make it soft. If you have any voids or defects in the mounting, you can mix a small amount of plaster and add it to the old one, so you can correct your mounting, as long as your incisor post is touching the plane and your mounting is centralized in the articulation. You should remove any excess plaster while it's soft and clean your articulator. You shouldn't also make your place or your working space dirty. So, like this. As you see, you are cleaning our articulator. Provided we are using Vaseline or any separating medium, the articulating will remain clean. Don't show it to your supervisor dirty or wet or something like this. And we are waiting until the plaster is sitting for from 10 minutes to 15 minutes. I'm using wax knife to so as you're seeing here, the plaster have entered into the indexes we have made in the base of the cast. So when you need to remount your cast again, you can use this index to place the cast in its position. For smoothing plaster, use a small amount of water, remove the plaster from the cast again. And here we have the mounting for the upper cast. We should allow it to set. It will take 10 minutes. You can use sandpaper, but I don't recommend it to smoothen the plaster. But I don't recommend the use of sandpaper. Here again we have made the mounting. If you feel like this area can be added, you can make a small amount of plaster and put it here to make it smooth again, and use your water to make it smooth. Finishing the setting of the maxillary mounting, we can make sure that our occlusion plane haven't changed. Both sides. Again, we're removing your rubber band and making your articulator upside down, and removing the lower compartment, removing our plasticine. Again, we are going to mix plaster according to the recommended ratio: 3 powder, 1 liquid, 100-gram powder and 30 milligram water. Here we need a small amount of water. Our mixing is smooth and shiny, not fluid, and support itself. Again, we will mix the cast. And use our component. Small amount of water, plaster from the cast. Putting your finger will help. On the other sides. Okay, this is plaster. Fingers. So You are allowed the mandibular mounting set also for from about 10 to 15 minutes. Make sure that your incisor pulse is still touch and your mounting is ready to receive the teeth for the setting process. So after the lower mount has set, you can use wet tissue to clean up your articulator. So when you are using Vaseline, you facilitating this step. So your articulator remain clean and shiny. And use your mounting. Your working space is clean also. No water, no plaster, no wax, no anything on the benches or your clothes or your instruments. Thank you and Happy New Year.